Straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily. Robert Durst finally takes the stand. The real estate heir accused of murder testifying in his own defense.
Did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
Do you know who did?
No, I do not.
And a convicted cop killer begs a jury for mercy. Stephen Wiggins' former co-worker wants him to not receive the death penalty.
You saved my life.
Plus, one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent alleged victims now sues Prince Andrew, accusing the British royal of sexual assault. And New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo resigns, days after a scathing report finding he sexually harassed 11 women.
I've never crossed the line with anyone.
Law&Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law&Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. Amid a sexual harassment scandal and threats of impeachment, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo has announced he's resigning from office.
The best way I can help now is if I step aside and let government get back to governing. And therefore that's what I'll do, because I work for you.
The governor apologized to many of the women accusing him of sexual harassment, including a state trooper who says Cuomo inappropriately touched her in an elevator while working on a security detail.
Now, I don't recall doing it, but if she said I did it, I believe her. It was a mistake, plain and simple. I have no other words to explain it. I want to personally apologize to her and her family. I have the greatest respect for her and for the New York State Police.
Terry, an apology to an officer where the allegations appear to be beyond the statute of limitations. Sincere apology or strategic legal move by Governor Cuomo?
You know what, Brian? It seems to be somewhat strategic to me. You know, he used this example, I think, to demonstrate the fact that he hired and promoted women. And if, in fact, this claim would be blocked by the statute of limitations, then he's looking at something where he is not going to be held liable. On the one hand, he apologizes and he seems as though he is humble. On the other hand, he says he doesn't even remember it happening. So this very well could have been a strategic example, and it definitely worked in his favor.
Yeah, it kind of gives him an air of humility to some degree because he's apologizing and it seems sincere, but again, there's no repercussions for this. It's not like he's apologizing to executive assistant number 1, right, who there's potential charges.
That's exactly right, and we know that there are 11 victims, and he didn't apologize to all of them for saying that he did something that was sexual harassment. So yes, I agree. This is one that might have just seemed as though he had no exposure.
All right, we'll see how those criminal charges and allegations continue as that investigation and other counties look into the Attorney General's findings. Thank you, Terry. Turning now to more top legal news, a vocal accuser of Jeffrey Epstein is filing a lawsuit against a member of the British royal family, accusing him of rape. Law&Crime's Anjanette Levy is here with a woman's claims.
Brian, Virginia Giuffre has claimed for many years that Prince Andrew raped her, and now she's put it all in writing in a lawsuit.
This photo of Virginia Giuffre with Prince Andrew has floated around on the internet for years. Ghislaine Maxwell, the former girlfriend of Jeffrey Epstein and his accused partner in the trafficking of girls, is also in the photo. In this 15-page lawsuit, Giuffre says in addition to being abused by Epstein himself, plaintiff was also forced to have sex with defendant Prince Andrew at Epstein and Maxwell's direction. Prince Andrew denied the allegations in a BBC interview in 2019.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
But the photo included in the lawsuit suggests otherwise. The suit goes on to claim that in 2015, after Giuffre made her claims against the prince public, he emailed Ghislaine Maxwell writing, "Let me know when we can talk. Got some specific questions to ask you about Virginia Roberts." The suit also claims Prince Andrew has not cooperated with U.S. authorities investigating Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's alleged trafficking operation involving the young women. Famed attorney Gloria Allred represents some of the women.
He has relevant information about Mr. Epstein, who was his friend.
Now, there's been no response to this lawsuit from Prince Andrew so far. He actually stepped back from his royal duties back in 2019 after that BBC interview aired. It was considered by most people to be an absolute disaster for him in the way that he spoke about Jeffrey Epstein and these allegations. Brian.
Thanks, Anjanette. Joining us today is civil rights attorney Katie Smith. Katie, filed just before the statute of limitations and asking for an unspecified amount. So far, the prince hasn't responded to anything involving Epstein, so should we expect him to respond to this lawsuit?
Yes, Brian, usually the first response is not a lengthy one. If there is personal jurisdiction obtained over him, meaning that he's properly served with legal process, then the next step is to file an answer. And answers aren't usually very interesting. They just basically deny every single paragraph in a complaint. Where stuff's going to get really interesting is as the case goes on, where he will be required, in order to defend himself, to produce relevant testimony and documentation.
All right, we'll see if that happens. Anjanette, didn't Virginia Giuffre try to reach an agreement that would have delayed this lawsuit?
Yeah, in the lawsuit, her attorneys actually write that they reached out to Prince Andrew. They sent an email and a letter last month saying, let's reach some type of agreement on tolling, and that's really the passage of time in which we would delay or not file this lawsuit. He didn't respond, so they filed that lawsuit because there was going to be an expiration of the statute of limitations to make these allegations in court papers.
So, Anjanette, what do you think we can expect after they filed this lawsuit? Just as Katie said, maybe wait and see for him to respond and move forward? What do you think?
Yeah, I think we just have to wait and see. And I think we could expect him to respond, even though he has not cooperated with U.S. authorities in the criminal investigation against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. We do know that the attorney for Virginia Giuffre has said that they don't think he can ignore this. So they think that he will be served with these papers in some fashion and have to respond.
All right, we'll see how that progresses as it continues. Thank you both. Still ahead on Law&Crime Daily, hear from Robert Durst himself on the witness stand accused of murdering his best friend. But first, emotional testimony from the friend of a murderer. Can this testimony determine the life or death sentence? Inside the Tennessee courtroom after the break. Welcome back now to Tennessee, where a convicted cop killer's defense is asking the jury to spare him from the highest sentence, the death penalty. Stephen Wiggins was found guilty of all charges linked to the brutal murder of Sergeant Daniel Baker. Wiggins shot and killed Baker, then set his body on fire in his own patrol car back in May 2018. Now in the penalty phase, Wiggins' former co-worker took the stand to fight for his longtime friend's life. Peter Schaefer even credits Wiggins with saving his life. During his emotional testimony, Schaefer starts to break down, saying he doesn't understand the death penalty. The judge was quick to dismiss this and instruct to the witness that he could not volunteer his opinion on that matter.
And you know why you're here today, right?
I do.
And
I know that I know I would if I wouldn't allow me to be here. Yeah. Yep. I dare to say if it was anybody that wasn't as strong as him. I mean, people do have that strength, and I hear, you know, little ladies lifting cars off of people, children and stuff like that. But it was a miracle type of thing. Pretty amazing. It's just amazing to me that to think that taking a life, for somebody to take in a life is just makes any kind of sense. I mean, doesn't forgiveness begin like healing? I just can't understand it.
Let me ask you this.
I don't think perpetuating poor decisions is a good thing.
The defense also called a nuclear medicine physician who gave interesting testimony about the state of Wiggins' brain.
Do you have any reservations, concerns whatsoever about the accuracy of the PET scan that was performed for Mr. Wiggins?
No, I mean, I feel very confident in the findings.
And Dr. Bigler, based on everything you reviewed of Mr. Wiggins' brain, does Mr. Wiggins have a normal brain?
No, I think this is an abnormal brain.
Let's bring back civil rights attorney Katie Smith and Terry Austin. Terry, this is the defense's case, not the guilt phase, but the penalty phase. Do you find them making any ground in getting a life sentence, though?
Actually, I do see them making some ground here. You know, obviously, it has to be unanimous to get the death penalty. It just takes that one juror. And the psychological evidence that the defense has put on so far in this phase has been somewhat impressive. For the most part, Dr. Small was not that impressive, but I think Dr. Watson and Dr. Newberg were quite impressive. They talked about the physical, emotional, and the mental damage that had occurred throughout the life of the defendant, and that he is technically brain damaged. That's what Dr. Newberg stated. So you might get one juror who thinks, okay, because of all of this, we should not put him to death. Now, having said that, we're in the state of Tennessee, and under the law there, this is a heinous crime, and if anything deserves the death penalty, it would be this case.
All right, so Katie, Terry's saying maybe kind of sort of getting there. So let's say this. You're representing Wiggins and you have the ability to create facts. With that power, what do you think factually could help save his life that you could present to a jury?
I love this power, by the way, Brian. This is great. But I mean, if we're given already with the conviction, I think that the only facts, if any, that would additionally help are some absolutely uncontroverted proof that he did not realize that what he was doing was wrong. And that's always the cornerstone that we come back to. It's one thing when a criminal defendant commits an act, but in order to have that intent requirement, they really have to appreciate the gravity and the actual result of that action. So that would be one fact that would be helpful.
All right, Katie, let me just take that power back. I'm going to use it for my next trial. Thank you for that input, and thank you both. Coming up on Law&Crime Daily, the all-important question, did Robert Durst murder his best friend? The answer from the defendant himself, next.
Did you kill Susan Berman?
No.
Do you know who did?
No, I do not.
Do you realize you have an absolute right not to testify?
I am aware of that.
Do you want to testify in your own behalf?
Yes.
And the long-anticipated testimony is finally here. Robert Durst has taken the stand in his own defense. Durst is on trial for the murder of his best friend, Susan Berman, in December 2000. Durst spoke in court many times about testifying, but court was delayed due to his health concerns and the pandemic. Durst, along with his attorney Dick DeGuerin, were allowed to wear face shields instead of masks. Durst reads real-time transcription from the court reporter on an iPad next to him. DeGuerin would hold his hand up if there was an objection. The defendant comes from a wealthy real estate family and says his mother's death when he was just 7 years old had a profound impact on his life.
I looked out the window and there was Mommy on the roof. Now my grandfather did not say, "Good God, there's Mommy on the roof." It was just very flat. "There's Mommy on the roof. Wave at Mommy."
What did you see?
Objection relevant.
I saw my mother lying on the
Motion to
cobblestone
strike.
in her nightgown.
We have to have it question and answer, Bob. So I will stop you when you go on too long. Understand?
I mean, I know the rules. It just depends how they're handled.
Did you see your mother in the driveway?
Yes, I saw my mother on the
Objection
driveway.
relevant, Your Honor.
And when Douglas Durst says that I could not have seen my mother on the roof from the window in the second floor hallway, Douglas Durst was lying.
Durst told the jury that he met Susan Berman at UCLA in the late 60s, and they became friends fast.
I readily found out that both her parents were dead and that her father had owned hotels in Las Vegas and had something to do with the mob.
When you first met Susan Berman, did you and she hit it off?
Yes,
Bob, were you and Susan ever lovers?
No,
How would you characterize your friendship?
best friends.
Durst says the same friend who introduced him to Susan Berman also introduced him to Kathy McCormick in New York City. Durst and Kathy opened a health food store in Vermont and got married in 1973.
We hit it off real well. We went out a couple more times in New York. And when I went up to Middlebury, Vermont, she came with me.
Tell the jury how your relationship with Kathy progressed.
Well, it progressed the usual way.
Did you fall in love?
Yeah, we were both in love. We both liked to be each other. Middlebury, Vermont was very quaint, easy to live in. There was not much in the way of entertainment. You had to entertain yourselves.
When we come back, all good things, or so they seem. More on the life and death surrounding real estate heir Robert Durst after the break. Back now to the trial of Robert Durst, where the defendant is taking the stand in his own defense. Durst says he didn't want to go to work for his family's real estate organization, but felt obligated to.
So I bought a suit, and periodically I would go into the business and sit in on a meeting. I felt bad about rejecting Seymour. My dad felt that I was rejecting this business which he had spent his lifetime creating for me. Except I did not feel like it was for me. I felt he was doing what he loved doing, period.
And did you want to do that?
I felt like I should do something so that he did not feel like I was being spiteful to him.
Testimony for the day ended on Durst talking about how his work life interfered with his relationship with Kathy. He's expected back on the stand on Thursday for more of direct.
Whenever I told Kathy that I was going to New York for several days, she would start to get sort of upset. I think she guessed what was going to happen in the future, which was that I was eventually going to give in and go to work in the Durst organization.
My next question was going to be how long you and Kathy had the store in Vermont.
Probably a year and a half.
That gets us to 1971.
In 1971, we decided we would get married. My initial reaction, I wanted to make sure Kathy was aware that I did not want to have children.
Durst's team has previously asked for a mistrial, claiming Durst's poor health would prevent him from taking the stand. After the jury left, prosecutor John Lewin pointed out that's clearly not the case.
Not only is Mr. Durst not showing any issues relating to competence, etc., his memory, the way he responds, his expressions, in every way, he is not only testifying with what appears to be complete command, he's got a substantially better memory and recall than the memory expert just testified. So I just want to make sure that this is...
We can't help us. Is that gratuitous? I mean,
No, it's not gratuitous.
Here's our witness here, and that's completely unfair for you to say that, but I will agree with you, though. I made an extensive record that there's no reason this witness could not testify. I had every confidence that he would be able to.
Katie, slow and methodical seems to be how Durst is telling his side of the story. But after everything Lewin threw at him for weeks, does Durst sound credible to you now?
Credible, not necessarily, but prudent, yes. I think this was a very smart move for him to be in front of that jury for as long as possible. I've been following Durst since the Jinx, and he has a very interesting command over people, and people like him. All he really needs to do is spin these interesting yarns for one person in that jury to have pity on him, to think that he isn't capable of this, and he wins the day.
Yep, it only takes just one, and it seems that in the past he's been, I don't know, someone charismatic enough to turn at least just one juror. Terry, based on the defense's arguments, Durst has made it to the witness stand against all odds. What's your take on the testimony so far?
You know, I think I agree with Katie. He looks better than he's ever looked throughout the entire trial, frankly. His hair is a little longer. He's sitting up straight. Yes, he is a little raspy, but he's getting his sentences out. Not sure why he didn't wear street clothes. That probably would have made him look better, but perhaps it's more comfortable in the clothing he's in. And this time, I have to agree 100% with Lewin. I think that he was fully cognizant here. He had a great memory with dates and times and places, and he's trying to have his cake and eat it too. He's trying to say that I'm too weak, we should have a mistrial, but on the other hand, here I am on the stand, and he actually did a very good job.
All right, well, I expect Robert Durst to be on the stand for quite some time, so we'll continue to follow that. Katie, Terry, thank you, and thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.